Well, hi there. First off, congratulations on making it to the end of Mix. I think this is the penultimate session, and thank you very much indeed for coming along. My name is James Clark, and I'm going to talk to you about video encoding for the next 20 minutes or so. So this is not the encoding that you would find in system.text.encoding.ascii. This is actually encoding video. Believe it or not, we do have people that get confused about that. So the theme here that I'm going to cover is optimizing performance for expression encoder. And performance really can be looked at in a number of ways. You can look at performance in terms of the quality of the video that you output. You can also look at the performance in terms of how fast or how slowly the video is encoded. And also, it may also encompass the kind of the workflow of how we do the encoding. So I'm going to use a maxim that I like to recount occasionally: good, fast, cheap, pick any two. Now I'm actually going to change that and show you how we can pick all three of those with expression encoder. So let's get started here. We'll start off with good. So I want to now show you initially what we'd recommend in terms of some of the performance tweaks for quality. So I'm just going to import a source clip into expression encoder. This is a QuickTime movie. And one of the great things about the tool is that it actually has a whole bunch of good presets. So if you're not really a video compressionist, if you're not an expert and you're not really into the bit rates and the resolutions and so on, this gives you a good starting point that you can get going with. Now, one of the recommendations I'd make here is that for each of our different presets that we typically have one called web server and one called streaming at the beginning. Now, in general, what we'd recommend is that you pick, for a given preset, for example, broadband, you actually pick the web server one unless you're specifically targeting a streaming server. So if you're doing a progressive download scenario and you were looking for a kind of a broadband rate, then we'd recommend you'd pick the web server broadband preset. Now, the reason for that is it uses variable bitrate two-pass encoding, and typically VBR will give you much better quality. So the second thing that we can do that's easy for quality, because there's a whole bunch of really difficult things we can do and really kind of scary settings that we have down in our advanced palette. But we do have some fairly simple settings down there as well. So if we have a look in this list, you can see we have kind of good, better, best. So if we just pick best, we actually get a lot of the kind of recommended settings turned on for us for free. We'll just have a little quick glance down here. It is a bit scary when we start looking down here and seeing adaptive dead zones and other such things. But really, a lot of the benefit comes from a couple of these, which we'll go through. First of all, video complexity. If we turn the encode complexity way up to 5, that will really lengthen the encode time. So it can multiply the encode times by up to 5 times. So it will really take a very much longer period of time, but you get great quality. The other one that will do the same thing, it will lengthen the encode times and improve the quality, is down here in our motion estimation. So you can see just by picking that preset, all of these things were turned on for us. So I want to now transition over and show you some pre-processing tools. Now, the video you get out of an encoder is only as good as the video you put in. We do have a number of built-in tools for doing pre-processing. But I want to just show you a great third-party utility that we really see a lot of people kind of using and deploying in the field. So what I'm going to do is come down here and import this file called bars.avs. Now, when I import this, something very clever happens. Bars.avs is actually a script. It's not a real file. So let's just import it and see what happens. It comes in, and you can see it has a duration of up to an hour, and it's some great color bars. What's actually happening under the covers, if we just have a look inside of that, is it's actually a script. And this is using an application called AVI Synth. And I'll just quickly show you the URL where you can get this from, avisynth.org. It's a great tool that basically has a whole bunch of built-in image processing functions. So things like noise reduction, scaling, you can do overlays, cropping, fading, all sorts of things. And just to kind of illustrate how powerful it can be, I'm just going to import another example here. Before I do so, I'll just show you what it looks like. So here, it's loading a plugin that allows it to read QuickTime files. It's then inputting a QuickTime source from this path. And it's then applying some temporal softening, which is a noise reducing function. So again, what's actually happening is that the AVI synth application under the covers is intercepting the file open call to the script, and rather than actually kind of trying to return the text in the file, it's interpreting it and actually executing the code in there. So you can see we've imported our clip, and we can actually go and play it back. Now, very quickly, what I can do in here is come in and just show you how I can modify this. So if I now type in a histogram function and wrap that around the file source, what it will actually do now if I refresh it inside of Expression Encoder is kind of recalculate, and you'll actually see it calculating a histogram and inserting that into the video data. So I mean, this is really just designed to show you the power of AVI synth and how it can really kind of help give great pre-processing functions to Expression Encoder. So those are some of our kind of good recommendations. We now want to talk about speed and performance. Now, not everyone wants to have really long encoding durations. Not everyone wants to sit there and wait 5 times longer than it might take. So we'll just have a quick look at some of the things we can do to tweak the speed. Now, I think, regardless of whether you're really kind of focusing on speed or performance, I think I'd still recommend the first thing that I mentioned, which was to use the web server to get the 2 pass, because that really does kind of prevent some nasty problems with things like blocking and other artifacts. But what you can do to speed things up a bit is, again, come down to the bottom down here, if we just zoom in on it. And in our advanced codec settings, we have some settings optimized for performance. So if we go and pick fast, then it will undo some of the things that we did before and really kind of accelerate our encode times. Now, a couple of other things you can do that are worth knowing. First of all, you can actually change the resize quality. So again, if you're in a hurry and you actually just want to bash your content out as quickly as possible, you can lower this default down to bilinear, and bilinear will give you reasonably good results, not as good as our default, but it can really speed things up. The other thing that you can do, which we turn on by default, is we turn on our adaptive deinterlacer. This is used when you have content that's come in that's got interlacing, which is where you have 2 different fields of video. Increasingly these days, a lot of video content is actually sourced progressively. And if that's the case, then we would recommend turning the deinterlacer off, and that will make things go a lot faster. So another thing that's a kind of a speed or performance thing that's really more along the workflow lines is how we can create presets. So to create presets, what we can do is configure the various settings we may have, whether it's the encoding settings, whether it's how we do overlays or stitching on like a leader and a trailer. We can configure all these things up and then save a preset. So what I can do is down in my media content panel down here, what I can do is right-click and say Save Current Settings as Preset. And this will then basically allow me to go in and pick the various parameters I want. I may not have set a lot of these things up and may just want to focus on, for example, metadata and apply the same metadata to a number of clips. So I can just come in and select my metadata section here. What will happen is our preset will be saved out as an XML file, and I can then easily apply that on a batch basis to a number of clips. So in a minute, we'll also see how we can use automation to kind of do batch processing as well. So another one on here that's kind of a workflow tip is the publishing support that we have built in. And oftentimes, if you're in a hurry and things need to happen quickly, you're going to do an encode and you're going to want to push it up to a server somewhere. So one of the features that we added in Expression Encoder in our Service Pack 1 release was publishing plugins. Now, in the box, we ship a WebDAV publishing plugin, and this allows me to directly target WebDAV servers, which is pretty much IIS, Apache, all of the main web servers have WebDAV. But this is actually a pluggable protocol, so if you have a more esoteric server environment that you want to target, you can go and write yourself a publishing plugin. So one of the ones that exists is a publishing plugin for the Silverlight streaming service, and this is a service that's available from Microsoft. You can get a whole bunch of storage and kind of distribution. And through the publishing plugin, you can basically push your encoded output up to that service in the box quite nicely. So the final thing I wanted to show you is it really covers two aspects. One is it covers our Express SKU. So the primary expression encoder product is a product that you buy. You can either buy it as a standalone product or as part of the Expression Studio bundle. But we do also have a free version, and this isn't kind of very well publicized, the fact that this free version is out there. So if you go and download the trial of Expression Encoder, you get to use the full feature set for 30 days. After 30 days, it will actually kind of regress down into an Express mode. And this Express mode not only works through the UI that we've been looking at it through already, but also through an object model. And so what I wanted to do very quickly is just show you how very easy it is to write a few lines of code and get meter encoding right inside of your application. So we're going to launch Visual Studio and create a new project. And we'll just create a console application. And to get access to the encoding features of Expression Encoder, I just have to add a reference to 3 DLLs. These DLLs are actually present in the GAC when you install Expression Encoder in the global assembly cache. And basically what you need to do is just add a reference to those 3 assemblies, and that's pretty much all you need. There is actually one other thing, which is you need a reference to Windows base, and the reason for this is that we use observable collections internally, and those are defined in Windows base. So we'll just add a reference there. And now in very few lines of code, I'm going to basically build an encode job. So the first thing I'm going to do is define a job. And as you'll see, that's in the Microsoft Expression Encoder namespace. So we'll just new up one of those guys. The next thing I need is a media item. And in the media item, in the constructor, we just need to pass in a file name that we want to transcode. So what I'm going to do is just come over to my videos, and I'm just going to copy that as path and paste it in here. So now that we have our media item, we basically need to add it to the job. So I can just say j.mediaitems.add, mi. Next thing we'll do is just to add an output directory here. So we'll set the output directory to be my desktop. So /users. And the final thing I'm going to do in this example is just to set an encoding profile. And that's simply a matter of on our media item, setting our video profile to be video profiles, which we'll add a reference to dot, and then I pick the profile that I want. So in the Express version of Encoder 2, let's get this right, you get 3 predefined encoding profiles that you can use. That's something that we're considering changing for the next release and giving you a few more to choose from. So we're pretty much going to give you a reasonable selection that you could use. So we'll come in and pick the streaming 256K profile. And then the final thing I would do here is just to call the encode method. So I can just say j.encode, just to show you how I can get some progress back. I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to bring in a snippet that will just give me a little bit of threading to help this happen. Now, the encode method is actually a synchronous method. So if you want to get the progress back, you have to do a little bit of threading magic. So I've defined an auto reset event. I've then set up a delegate to capture my progress, and it's just writing it out to the console here. And then I'm just basically putting this onto the thread pool and calling encode on the thread pool. And then when the encode's done, I'm setting my auto reset, which will signal to me. And then on my main thread, which is waiting, it'll just exit. So let's see. I won't set a breakpoint. I think we'll just run it and hope for the best here. So what it does initially, we're currently at the point where we're opening the media item up, and that takes a few seconds. And then you can see the callback is being fired as it goes through and encodes. And then at the end, hopefully, we'll have an output that we can play back. So we'll switch to the desktop. And here's our output of our job, and here's our file. So this is really designed to show you how, if you want to have media encoding, that may be on the server, maybe on the client. You may want to build, for example, a WPF application that would publish up to a web service. In either case, we do have an answer for you and a story for you. And that's pretty much the end of the talk. So thank you very much. I would encourage you to fill in the eval forms if you would. And do come up and ask me questions. And that's it. Thank you.